Good morning and welcome to another edition of Our Town here on 94.9 and 99.1 The River. My name is Darren Swenson. Our Town, as always, brought to you by Decorah Bank and Trust. On the show this morning, we'll be talking with Darlene Fossum-Martin. She is the coordinator of the Barnelopet race, which will take place a week from Saturday in Decorah. She'll tell us all about that event. We'll talk with Andrew Boddicker. He is the chair of a committee trying to achieve a designation of an Iowa Great Place for the city of Lansing. And they're asking you to take a survey, whether you're a visitor to Lansing or a resident of Lansing. We'll have that conversation a little later on in the program. We'll talk to Waukon City Manager Gary Boden, get the latest on what's going on in the city of Waukon. But we'll kick off the program this week. Obviously, a news-getting week down at the state legislature as a school voucher, a school choice bill went before the legislature and passed both chambers. Governor Reynolds ended up signing that bill earlier this week. We'll get the takes on the legislation from all three of our lawmakers. Mike Bergan, state representative from Dorchester, state representative Anne Osmundson from Volga, and state senator Mike Klimesh. That will kick off the program here this morning. You're listening to Our Town, brought to you by Decorah Bank and Trust on 94.9 and 99.1 The River. Mike, the governor's education savings account bill passed both chambers of the legislature last night. She's going to sign it this morning. You were a no vote. Why?
Well, Darren, we have good quality public schools in Northeast Iowa, and I feel that the impetus for this bill didn't generate from our area of the state. And I think I've got to be cognizant of that approach.
Is this a bill that will do some harm, at least from a funding perspective, to public schools over the next few years and into the foreseeable future, in your mind?
I guess the short answer is no. We're in a situation where we've had revenue surpluses. We're looking at a $600 million surplus for our current year. We do have the capacity, even with the projections as we go forward, to pay for this change. The system or the proposal is a paradigm shift in how we think about educating our children. It's a change from funding a public institution to serve the children that attend to funding children at the similar level to attend an accredited school of their choice. So this is going to allow students to attend accredited non-public schools as an alternative to the public school. And we do have some parochial schools in the area that will have students benefiting from this. Overall, with the funding, this adds the number of students that are being funded in Iowa with final phase-in will be expected to include the 33,000 that are currently enrolled in accredited non-public schools, and will increase by projections 5,000 to 10,000 additional students. There is concern that those additional students may be from leaving public schools, and to some degree that may happen, but I also believe there's opportunity for parents who've opted for homeschooling to have this funded option for a accredited school, that we may see some shifts from that population as well.
This was a bill that, or at least an idea that had been discussed the last two previous legislative sessions. What was the reason it passed this year and got to a point it hadn't gotten to over the past 2 years?
I think there's probably several reasons. The first two bills I was adamantly opposed to. They were limited in scope and targeted areas. This third proposal was broad range across the state. It did have a certain price tag attached to it. It's a conscious investment that was necessary and came at a time when this is our third year of excess funds, surplus of revenue, to put us in a position that we can document that it's affordable overall in the state. It's adopting education as a priority, which has always been a priority in the state. It just does change that paradigm focus of funding the student, not the institution.
Based on what you've answered a few of these questions this morning, even though you were a no vote, there were parts of is it fair to say there were parts of this legislation that you are for, despite voting overall no on the bill?
I would put it this way, Darren, that this is a significant improvement over the previous two bills. There are other funding priorities that may be delayed because of the influx that goes into education at this point. We certainly need to add and increase funding to public health. I think the politics of the proposal was this needed to be decided before we could move forward. I will be advocating for increased funds above what the governor recommended for our public schools, because undoubtedly the people have spoken at our town halls and in emails and other communications with me that we need to add more support to our public schools, and I'm in favor of that.
And looking at how this bill came to be, there were some concerns brought up with the process on how you got this. In your chamber, it did not go through the House Ways and Means Committee. It seems, at least to those that were opposed to this idea, that this bill was rushed. Was it?
Well, it's the first bill of the session, and so the first bill doesn't spend much time on the calendar. We've met all our other rules with the process. As Rule 32 was adjusted from the past 4 sessions that I've been involved in. In the past, we've adjusted several rules for COVID and our response there, and we actually reversed the remainder of those this year back to what we consider normal. We always had the option of just simply suspending the rules. This was put through a process with the change so that we had an opportunity to debate the merits of where the rules are. These rules are temporary for this session. And it's more of a housekeeping process than it is a legislative action.
What is your message to those that are concerned that this could be a overall negative thing for school districts, especially in your district, moving forward?
We'll see, and it'll play out. We do have some protections with the budget guarantees, those type of things. If there is a migration of students, there is that delay. That same process happens through open enrollment as well. It's important to recognize that in District 63, we have 4 parochial schools that will be benefiting from this. They will have tuition funding coming into the community to help support their education components as well. Certainly, I've heard mixed sentiments, even from those involved in our local parochial school, but we'll see how that evolves going forward.
Governor's education savings account bill, Mike, passed last night. She's expected to sign it this morning. You supported it. Why?
I voted for the bill because I think it gives opportunities in rural Iowa for both public and private schools to receive additional funding from the state. And I think that's a partnership that works, especially in my district. In my district, I have 704 private school students already enrolled in private schools. Most of them are parochial schools. The way the bill was structured, those 704 students are already in those private school seats. But on the backside, if those parents are eligible for ESAs, either year 1, year 2, or year 3, the public schools, which are currently receiving no funding from those students at all, will receive $1,202. it equates to just under $900,000 for all the schools in my district that would be eligible additional funding for the public schools. For the private schools that are already educating those kids, it provides them with a little additional funding to be able to stay solvent. And those dollars will turn over in our local economy. There's no doubt about that. I did not see a detriment to rural Iowa schools in this bill. And visiting with other senators who have no private school options in their rural districts, they felt the same way. They felt that this was not going to be a way to undermine public school systems. And in my district, I've got great public schools that do an awesome job at educating our students. I think we don't see that in the urban areas quite so much. But if you look at what everybody's talking about is the migration rate, what it's gonna look like and how it's gonna increase private schools. And in my district, if you look at the math and you look at the declination in population over the last decennial census, and you look at the median average incomes for a private company to come in and build a private school and only be able to receive $7,500 per student to educate that child, I just don't see where we're going to build out additional seats in rural Iowa, especially in my district, Darren.
This was an issue that has been discussed for the last couple legislative sessions. What got it across the finish line this year?
Well, I think the way the bill was structured this year, like I said earlier, where we were actually giving public schools who are not currently educating the students that are enrolled in private schools an opportunity to receive some funding for those students. Again, students that are not currently educating, those parents have made this choice to put them in a parochial school. So this gives, like I said, the public schools an opportunity to receive some funding. I believe Decorah would be eligible. I think there's 136 students that are enrolled in St. Benedict's. So if you do the math, at $1,202, I think it's somewhere around, I don't have a calculator in front of me, but $140,000, $150,000 a year they'll be able to receive for students that they're not educating. And I know that we've heard a lot of talk about, public dollars going to private education, but we do that in the state already. We have the Iowa Tuition Grant, to which we fund about $50 million a year in, which is for post-secondary education. And they're able to apply for a $7,500 grant for that, and that goes to a private four-year college. So, the argument about public and private, we already do that in the state. We do it, whether it's through the Iowa Tuition Grant, there's other grant programs available for secondary education. So, again, that argument to me was, if you wanted no public funding for private schools, we need to take a look at other stuff we're doing in the state as well.
And a couple of the arguments that were made against this, one of the arguments is private schools can pick and choose who they take and restrict who they take. Thus, maybe this bill doesn't do what it's intended to do. What is your response to that?
Well, again, looking at my district, Darren, I don't see where St. Ben's or St. Teresa's of Calcutta or those other schools operating are being selective in their approach to the students that they're taking. And as far as, the talk about them not being held to the same accreditation standards as public schools, well, that's just not true. Private schools are held to the same standards. The bill ensures that. The bill also ensures that they must do yearly testing on their students and submit those scores to the Department of Education to ensure that they're providing a quality education to those students. And just so we're clear, the bill does not provide funding for Mennonite schools or Amish schools. A school that is not accredited, they're not eligible for the program.
And another thing that was brought up throughout this debate is when you give the public dollars to the non-public institutions. Of course, public school districts have to have open school boards, open meeting laws, and a lot of transparency. The argument is made that private schools do not. What do you say to that?
Well, as far as transparency goes, I think no matter whether it's public or private, the ultimate transparency is the parents involved in those school systems. So, I firmly believe that, our private schools in Northeast Iowa have accountable boards, being held accountable by the parents that educate their children in those systems.
And long-term, from a price tag standpoint, can the state afford this?
Yes, the state can afford it, actually. So our budget surplus this year will be somewhere around $700 million. And if you look at the REC estimates, that's rolling forward from year to year. I don't see an issue where this won't be fully funded. I know it's fully funded right now, actually fully funded at year 3 implementation with our surplus. So, there's been a lot of talk about taking money from public schools to pay for this, and that's just simply not true. This is a separate pot of money. We're taking no dollars from any public school allocation to fund this program.
And the governor's education savings account bill was passed by both the House and the Senate last night. You were voted yes on the measure. Why?
Good morning, Darren. There were several reasons. I had my reservations when the bill first came out. I asked, why did this have to move so quickly? I struggled with creating a new committee. But the purpose, I understand, was that, I know sometimes bills get assigned to a committee and it doesn't go anywhere. And leadership knew that there was a majority of people that liked this bill and wanted it to move forward. And so they created a new committee and so that it could move forward, so that everybody could get a vote on it. So I know that, has bothered some people. Why did I vote for it? Because, I don't know, I guess I have long held that there is alternative to public education. And yet, even when I homeschooled my kids, we still had them enrolled in the public school so that they got funding. And I have heard of many families, I guess, especially since COVID, when parents were watching online what was happening in their kids' classrooms, and then were very disappointed. And they have gone to the administration, to the school board, and it just seemed nothing happened. And so these people needed relief. I mean, some of them were single parents or parents that didn't have the means. We need to fund a child. Our goal is to get people educated, not necessarily funding a system. So I felt like also we ran budgets on it. LSA came out yesterday with their revenue estimate. I can't even think what it's called at the moment, Darren. But they came out with their numbers and it looked like it would work just fine into the budget. I was concerned about rural schools, but it does not reduce the funding to rural schools. So I thought to give people more choice, to get parents into education systems that meet more so perhaps their values, that this would be a good bill.
This has been an issue that has been discussed the 2 previous legislative sessions. What got this idea across the finish line this year?
Maybe a change in the number of people in the House. The governor made it no secret that this was very important to her and to many Iowans. She campaigned on the issue. Others campaigned on the issue. I don't know exactly what got it across the finish line, whether it was just a change in the makeup of the chamber.
And related to the issue of school choice, as most people very well know, private institutions have the right to restrict the number and the people that go to their own institutions. By that fact alone, is this bill doing what it is intended to do?
Yes, I think it will. As these private schools are given more funds to work with, then they can hire more teachers. I talked to one private school in particular that their teachers start at like $29,000. They can attract good teachers. They can attract more teachers to help. Are they full? You know, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I don't look for a huge exodus from our public schools, especially in our rural areas. There aren't very many private schools. Plus, I believe our rural schools are meeting parents' needs. They're smaller. They communicate with parents. They have the same values. So I don't really look for a huge exodus.
And related to the private schools getting taxpayer money, of course, all public schools have to be transparent. They have to have public school board meetings. They have to publish their budgets, and all sorts of information related to the district needs to be made public. Those private institutions aren't under those same guidelines. Is that concerning to you?
Well, I know that they do have boards and the parents that send their children there, and anybody, I'm sure, can talk with these people and make sure. We also fund the colleges, private colleges, through tax credits, through grants. I mean, you know, I don't know, are they under the same scrutiny as our public colleges? But it is being done on a higher level, and it seems to be working well.
You talked about yesterday, the LSA came out and said, as for now, this idea will fit within the state's budget. But as this idea gets more phased in and more people become eligible for this $7,700 approximate tax credit down the road, do you fear that the money, especially for rural districts, may get smaller as the program expands and gets more phased in?
When they run these numbers, they project several years out, revenue, expenses, and they're saying it still fits within the budget. And I would not want to reduce the funding to our rural schools. So I'm confident that they know what they're talking about and that it will fit.
And moving forward, again, you touched on the concerns people had over the process to get this bill passed, especially this early in the session. Does that create some potential headaches, some mistrust, animosity that perhaps was unnecessary if the process, according to many, would have been a lot more smooth on this end of things as compared to what it was?
Yeah, I think you're right. It does create some apprehension and questions in people's minds. And, you know, I agree. I would have liked it not to happen this way, but I'm not the one in leadership here. And I do understand that we have a lot of other legislation that we need to talk about this year, and to keep it going for weeks, and that's all you can focus on. That's all people are focusing on. We can't get any other work done. So I do understand it needed to keep moving, and I agree. It creates questions in people's minds, and I am sorry about that. I don't like that part of it either.
How do you get over that? How do you get beyond it?
I guess I get beyond it because I realize we have other work that we have to do, that we have to get done. You know, people have criticized me for not returning emails, but it's so difficult to return emails and get other work done and help people through other issues they have with agencies. And then if we, you know, kept this going, I've gotten hundreds of emails. If we kept it going for more and more weeks, I definitely wouldn't have been responding to emails and we wouldn't have gotten other things done. So I feel like we have to move past it and get other things accomplished.
Having a conversation this morning with Gary Boden. He is the city manager of Waukon, and joining us on this conversation to help ask a few questions is Joe Moses from the Waukon Standard. And Joe, I'll let you ask the first question to the city manager.
get into my document here. And I know from Monday's city council meeting, I know a lot of financial information was discussed as part of the presentation. Are there any highlights of that presentation that you would like to kind of go over, or some notable things that you'd like to make the public aware of?
Well, one of the things that we did on Monday night is effectively establish for publication the property tax rate for fiscal year 2024, which starts in July. The proposal which the council accepted was to raise the tax rate by 25 cents per thousand to $15.25. That increase represents a 1.67% increase on property taxes for municipal government in the city. And it really is reflective of kind of a status quo circumstance as far as it relates to the taxes that can be generated. But we did go through a lot of work showing the impact of tax increment financing on our tax base. And as a result, we made some one-time adjustments to how we actually pay for our city's government, our operations costs, due to the fact that we're going to have a one-time surge in tip usage. Instead of having approximately $20 million of our assessable tax base committed to tip payment, this year our tax base will actually double to about $40 million of tax base used for tips. That's a one-year circumstance. We made some deferrals on internal borrowings in the upcoming years that will bring it back down to the $20 million level. But this particular year, we're having a lot of tip payment occur, but we made some adjustments as far as one-time shifts of general fund revenues toward the operations cost, so that we can keep the tax rate at a reasonable and rather minimal level of expansion.
And related to the whole taxation and putting together the budget that will begin on July 1st, where is the city sitting the best when it comes to the budget moving forward? And you probably touched on quite a few of them just now, but what is going to be the biggest challenge in putting together this budget? And is there any uncertainties out there in putting together this budget?
To be honest with you, any challenges that we're confronted with, we've already addressed. We have a rather cumbersome budget making process that was caused by the state legislature. We have to set our tax revenues, property tax revenues, before we formally even publish the budget. But because we have this tax issue as far as TIF is concerned, we pretty much have to have our budget done before we even set the property taxes. I don't think the legislature anticipated that circumstance, or for that matter expected it, but how we do budgets is cumbersome, not because of unanticipated types of costs. It's just that it's a rather bureaucratic nightmare based upon what the legislature's paneled us to do. This occurred about 4 years ago. It really is something that we just, all cities have to deal with, but in effect, we've been able to manage what we're doing. And I think rather successfully. I think the council feels that way. As far as the actual surprises or anything, I mean, the only thing that's happening here is that we had to make some adjustments to our budgeting because we're doing such major capital improvement enhancements in the city, particularly the Platinum subdivision. But when all is said and done, Lana Snicker and I actually pretty much nailed down the budget this morning. We already had probably 95% of it done by last Monday, but we're going to see a budget surplus that we're projecting right now to be in the range of revenues exceeding expenditures of about $30,000. Our fund balance is going to be probably just under $600,000. That doesn't count what we have to make an allocation for the ambulance set aside, but it'll be within the range of our capability of the 20 to 25% range that we need to have on hand for cash flow purposes. So realistically, while we had to do a little bit of shuffling around, the overall impact is not much change.
Go ahead, Joe.
As far as the Elmkey Street fire damage and cleanup, is there any kind of an update on that? I know the debris, I think there was some delay with the contractor who's going to be handling that.
That's all I can report is that the contractor's been in delay. I mean, we've had him contracted for, well, I think it's coming up on 2.5 months, but they've had backlogs because we had to get queued in with other projects that they already had made commitments to, and I'm sure that the weather's had some impact on that. We're just waiting. I mean, part of the problem we have here is that we can't just hire anybody to do this. These people have to be registered, particularly as it relates to asbestos abatement. And if we were to do any grant work in the future, we have to do this the right way. And as a result, we got, I think, the only cleanup company that does this kind of work in Northeast Iowa. They're out of Luxembourg. So we're waiting like everybody else, but we have everything in place to make it happen. We also have an understanding as far as the financing is concerned. In fact, we are using tax and financing to pay for this cleanup.
Is there anything that you can comment on as far as future use of that property?
Well, I think the first thing is that once we get it cleaned up and torn down, then there will be questions as to how we go about doing it. I have made observations to the city council, not necessarily recommendations, but made observations to city council that this could be at least $1 million project. And the question is would the city be willing to participate in that cost from the standpoint of using tax increment financing? If you look at the renovation of the Tierney building, where the AJ Steakhouse is now, public sector dollars came in at about 50% of that renovation. If we did the same thing here for the rebuild, I think that we will be talking about $500,000. That assumes that there'd be first floor office or commercial and probably 2 floors of residential. Hopefully you could probably get 6, maybe not as many as 8 units and 2 floors. But I think the point is that right now we really don't have a plan in place because we're still trying to get the thing cleaned up and really have an understanding of what we're going to be confronted with as far as the street development is concerned.
Also, the other night you discussed the street department, park and rec department garage. That's been an issue that you've touched on in the past. Give us the latest on that specific issue.
Well, we have $700,000 committed to the project already sitting in the account. FEH has now been contracted to do a needs assessment so that, in fact, we know what kind of building we need and an estimation of cost. Having that building, not a design, but just a building concept put together, it will also assist us in making determinations on where we would site the facility. At this point in time, this project is going to need this needs assessment later on this year. I would expect that we would probably pursue the idea of where we would site it. But at this point in time, we don't know where to site it based upon we don't have the detail of the kind of building that we need.
Joe, go ahead.
I know something that's been ongoing, the Waukon Park and Rec Facilities Survey through MSA Professional Services. And is there any update that you can provide on that? And is there any kind of a time frame that you're hoping to have completed surveys or for the research to be compiled and.
Yeah, one of the things that happened on Monday night was that MSA attended the basketball games at the high school to try and solicit input from folks for the survey. They're not putting a specific deadline on it, although we're probably looking at February, maybe early into March before it's completed. There is no indication about what the survey has yielded thus far. Going into that on-site data gathering opportunity at the high school football or basketball game on Monday night, they had, I think, about 182 respondents. But we're encouraging everybody to get online. You can use it get online very simply through a QR code to take the survey and give your ideas and impressions on what you want to do. I think that we probably will see something come out really in March as far as the results, but we don't want to let that information out. They don't want to let that information out too soon because they want people to come up with their own ideas as opposed to being impacted or affected by what people have already said. So that's where it's at. I think we're kind of excited about having this survey because I think it'll give everybody in the community an opportunity to kind of figure out where we want to go with parks and recreation, not just physical facilities, but also recreation programming into the future.
And what's the latest regarding ATV and UTV usage in the city? I know the state legislature passed a law, and many municipalities have had to look at what they had on the books
Right.
based on what the new law in the state of Iowa says it is. Where is Waukon proceeding when it comes to ATV and UTV usage?
Well, the council impaneled an ad hoc committee to discuss this issue. There will be the city attorney, the police chief, 2 members of city council, Steve Wiedner and Arvid Hatlin, as well as an invitation to 2 UTV groups in the county to talk about this issue. My guess is that we'll make adjustments based upon the input from this ad hoc committee, and that ultimately this decision will be brought to the council probably in the spring.
Joe, go ahead if you got one.
I guess, could you expand upon what was discussed at the meeting as far as the preliminary designs for the First Street Northwest, the First Avenue Northwest storm sewer project?
Well, the project's been contemplated for a long time, since the middle part of last decade, because when we started doing major stormwater management improvements. That was necessary because of the experience we had of the flood in 2013. We have done a lot of storm sewer installation from that detention pond area, which would be a slow release on the northeast or northwest side of town, typically known as the Bresnahan property, although it's owned by the city. This storm sewer project is the last one to hook that system into our existing system. And what this one does is it takes the existing old line-based storm sewer that goes underneath McMillan's on the corner of First and First Northwest and actually puts it out into the street. It also does some upsizing too, but the idea would be is that we put it in the street, take it out from underneath the building, and then plug the openings that were created by this redirection. This project is finally being done really through the assistance of the American Rescue Plan money, as much as other things. We'll use stormwater utility for it, and I think we have some local option sales tax money going into it also. It's estimated at $550,000 at this point in time, although to be honest with you, we don't have the final design. That design will come out actually at the next council meeting, for which we'll ask the council to go to direction to go to bid and advertise the bid from that process. I expect that we'll award the bid in early March.
And it's probably a good time to remind folks council meetings going to be starting a little earlier now.
Yes, in fact, we've had two now that start at 6 o'clock, and I can tell you that a lot of council members are happy to get home before 8 o'clock, or in some cases before 7 o'clock. Our last meeting really went 45 minutes. This one, because we had obviously some protracted discussions related to the budget, went an hour and 45 minutes. But getting home at 8 o'clock is something that I think a lot of people find as a positive.
And I'm guessing yourself included there, right, Gary?
Absolutely. Although, what happens is that I don't go home from work after 4 o'clock. I just stay through till 6.
Yeah. So, Joe, if you got anything else, go right ahead.
Actually, that is my complete list of questions so far.
Okay. And Gary, anything else? You feel the public needs to know, as long as you got the forum this morning?
Well, I made one mention at the council meeting about this, and that is that there are concerns that we have regarding the budget making process for the county. And we're very interested in maintaining the status in its current form of the Alameda County Economic Development and Tourism Committee, or Commission, I guess. We're concerned about whether that will be impacted by the budgeting process. There's going to be a lot of people that will show up at the county board's budget hearing process or budget making process with this group next Monday after the county board meeting about 11 o'clock. But we have a lot of concerns. There's a lot of people in other communities, not just us, are concerned about keeping that very essential function going. It's something that is very significant to the economic development of our community, and that community definition is for the entire county. We know that Postville and Lansing and New Albany, to a degree, utilize these services also. The city makes a contribution of over $12,000 to help support that function. We're concerned about whether, in fact, the county is going to maintain their commitment. And that's something that is of interest to us, but it's also interest to other cities in the county.
And I'll sneak in one final question. Of course, the state legislature has started down in Des Moines. Is there anything from a city perspective that you're keeping an eye on that could possibly happen this session? Not
specifically, although it's probably just a touch too early to tell whether we're going to see something. I mean, every time the legislature goes in, it is of concern to cities. We have not been favored by the legislature for years. And to be honest with you, we have very exacting requirements for how we can put together our budgets, even more exacting than counties have. And for us to keep going this way, we do what we can do. But the fact of the matter is that if there's some effort by the county, or by the state to further restrict our revenue generation, or some mandate of service programming, which we don't normally see, that goes unfunded, it becomes problematic for us. I think one of the things that you can see as far as city governments are concerned is because we're nonpartisan, we don't act in a political sense like even county governments do. And as a result, there may be a mix of, or a misunderstanding of function here. Cities operate far more like businesses as opposed to any other governments because, first of all, we are nonpartisan. And secondly, the services that we provide are similar to, if you will, a homeowners association, an HOA. We do the same things as HOA with one exception, and that is that we also do economic development on a very active level. And that's not just us, it's all cities.
All right, Gary, we appreciate you taking the time informing the folks of Waukon of what's going on from a city perspective. And we appreciate the time as always and look forward to chatting with you next month. And Joe, thanks for joining us and providing the good questions to the public as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Gary Boden, city manager of Waukon, joining us this morning. Having a conversation this morning with Andrew Boddicker. He is the chair of an advisory committee applying to make Lansing one of Iowa's great places. And he is here to discuss a community survey where the folks of Lansing are going to be asked a few questions. Andrew, thanks for taking the time. Tell us about this survey and what the folks of Lansing can do to partake in this survey.
Great. Thanks, Darren, for having me. Well, this survey is open to community members, residents, or visitors all alike until February 5th. It is our way of canvassing our community for what they'd like to see happen in Lansing in terms of infrastructure or communication improvements or big and small projects alike. And everything on the survey was generated from 3 focus groups that we held early January. So this is all things already from our community, and we're seeking that feedback so that the city of Lansing can create a vision plan for its future.
How did we get to this point? How did you get to the focus group point? How did you get to this community survey? Take us through the process of what you've been through.
Well, it was spurred on really by our RAGBRAI effort last summer, because as a result of that, the organizing committee had $120,000 of monies to give away, and we accepted grant applications from across the community, and we had over $300,000 worth of requests, and so many ideas were generated and presented in that process. And I was part of that committee and that group, and I thought, gosh, we can't stop here. So I tried to figure out a way to maybe bring some of these ideas together and to move them forward. Last October, I explored this idea of an Iowa Great Place. It's a pretty long established program through the Iowa Department of Cultural Affairs. And I asked the city if I could start an exploratory committee to see if that was something that we would be eligible for and really want to commit to. So we did that. And in December, we got the go-ahead from the city to go forward with the application process. And one of the big elements for that designation is to create a vision plan for our community. And you have to have extensive community feedback. So we gathered 3 different groups of focus groups of different age groups from our residents in early January to start that process. And from that process, along with our advisory board that we've gathered, we created a survey, which is now live for our residents and visitors to take.
You discussed your efforts in making Lansing one of those Iowa great places. What would that designation do for the community?
Well, it is a 10-year designation. So over that 10 years, you work on your vision plan. Now, it's not a fixed document, but it is rather an opportunity document, as I would like to describe it. And those projects are overseen by your advisory board and the organizing committee, which is in our case, the city of Lansing. And through that 10 years, you're working on these projects. You get technical assistance from the state. You get access to one large funding opportunity, and it varies across the state. So communities have gotten anywhere from $70,000 for this project up to almost $500,000. So Lansing is at a place where we have some big projects coming up. And this is one of those, this is an incentive to do this vision process, to commit to making these improvements to your city. And thirdly, it creates an accountability with the city. So you aren't committed to doing everything in your vision plan, but it is one of those things to say, we are committed to seeing these ideas through to whatever extent that we can possibly do them. And it should create some real positive change for your community.
And it was interesting to me, you say you want city residents and maybe visitors to the community to take part in this survey. Normally, a lot of times when it comes to these city surveys, it's only the residents of that municipality that are invited to take place. Why is it important to get the opinions of people who visit Lansing as well as its city residents?
Well, as most people know, Lansing is quite a destination for thousands of visitors every year, and they come to Lansing because it's already great, and we know that they will come back, and we'd like to see what they would come back for. So they're an important part of our community, an important part of why we are who we are. And in addition, the survey is set up in such a way where we can separate those two groups. So we can view what just residents say and what just visitors say. So it's a really, we're able to kind of segregate those out so we can look at the different groups and what their wishes are. And I think you're right. We are those people who live here full time. So we certainly value our residents' opinion greatly.
How can people partake in this survey?
Right now it's linked on the lansingiowa.com website. So they can go there and they can get a link through that. It's also on a few social media posts through Main Street Lansing and our Park and Rec board. So it's out there, but lansingiowa.com would be your best bet to access that survey.
Anything we're missing? Anything else you want to pass on to the public regarding this survey and your overall efforts to get that Iowa Great Places designation?
Well, we just want to encourage people to take the survey. We're really excited about what it can bring. We're trying to build consensus around big ideas because that data helps guide our city forward. We have a lot of great opportunities and we want to take advantage of the momentum that we garnered from RAGBRAI. And every opinion counts and every opinion matters. And we really look forward to seeing the results and to share with the community what those were.
Well, we all know Lansing is a great place, and hopefully the designation will come your way here in the not too distant future. Andrew, we appreciate you taking the time and telling us about the survey, and best of luck with your efforts to increase the viability of Lansing, already a great place.
Thank you, Darren.
Andrew Boddicker joining us, a city survey of Lansing residents. The next step in the process of trying to get that Iowa Great Places designation is available to residents and visitors until February 5th. Having a conversation this morning with Darlene Fossum-Martin, and we usually talk to her at this time of year because Barnelopet is just around the corner, a fun, exciting event year in and year out, and it sounds like you got plans for another one coming up a week from Saturday, Darlene.
We do. It's coming up February 4th at the Decorah Prairie, starting at the Butterfly Garden.
And give us, for those that aren't familiar with the event, tell us what it's all about.
Well, it's a children's cross-country ski race. It's not really a race. It's just a at-your-own-speed, leisurely event. It's also going to be a walk. So if kids don't have skis, or if we don't have the right kind of snow and it's not icy, they can walk and ski, either or both. It's going to be a 1 mile loop. And then there is a shorter loop for kids that are younger. The ages are 3 to 13 years old. And this is actually the 24th year that we are doing the Barnelopet, minus a couple cancellations and COVID. And we have had every age group that has been represented every time we've held this race, from 3 to 13. So it's a really fun event. It's sponsored by the Sons of Norway Lodges in Spring Grove, Lanesboro, and Decorah here, along with Vesterheim Museum. And it's a fun event.
And the people that support this event, they've kind of been with this event really from the get-go, haven't they?
Really from the get-go, yes. The very first year, it was just Vesterheim and myself. And then we had the Decorah Lodge, and then the Spring Grove and Lanesboro Lodge joined shortly after that to sponsor it. We also have John and Mary Hart that are sponsoring it as well. And because of them, we're able to do this event free. So there are no charges for coming and participating. Just come, bring your skis, bring your sleds if you have little kids with. It's a family event. We have families that have kids that are younger and they're either on a backpack or in the sled following with their child that's actually doing the event.
And it's been a fun family event, and it's coming up a week from Saturday. How do people sign up?
Well, they sign up the day of. So we have registration. It's advertised at 9:40. If you want to come a little earlier, you can. It seems like an odd time, but we do have cold. There have been years when it's been cold weather, and we don't want the kids standing around, getting cold before the event, although they're not standing around. They're skiing and walking and running and, kids. It's the parents we don't want to stand around and get cold. So, come 9:30 to register the day of the event. The event itself starts at 10 o'clock. That's when we have our first group. We start with the older kids, and we start them off at 10, and then the younger ones will start right after the older kids, so that the older ones get out of the way, or the young ones aren't in the way for the older kids on the track.
And of course, when you're dropping off your kids, or you're parking there, that area around the Decorah Community Prairie, not a ton of parking in that area. Where do you suggest people drop their kids off or park on that day?
Well, that's a good question, Darren. It seems like we've had sufficient parking, but there are some that also park on the other side of the dike. At the end of Ohio Street, there's parking there as well. And then they just walk up over the dike, and we're just right at the butterfly garden. So it's not much of a walk at all. So the race does start right at the butterfly garden. And that's where we'll have our tables as well.
And you mentioned this race has been going for 24 years. This event has been going for 24 years. What's kept this going? Because getting anything to last a quarter of a century nowadays is quite the accomplishment.
Me.
There we go. That was going to be my answer, but I'm glad you answered it for me.
Well, skiing, when I was in Norway, I went over to Norway at one time to ski with my family, my relatives. And it was during Easter, and that's a big thing. You ski to your cabins in the mountains. And I was just amazed at all the little kids that were whooshing right by me when I was trying to go down these big hills. And it's like when we moved to Decorah here, which is such a Norwegian area, it's like, oh, we need to have one of these Barnelopets, because I knew about them from working in at Sons of Norway home office in Minneapolis. And so I started one up with the help of Vesterheim backing me, and they've just been going ever since. There's been a couple times towards the end here where I asked if anybody was interested in taking over. And of course, they'd rather work it than take it over, which totally I can understand. So I'm still young yet, so I'll just keep on until I can't do it anymore. And now my grandkids are getting at that age where if they want, they can ski in it as well. So that's how we keep it going.
That's a pretty awesome story. Anything we're missing? Anything else the public needs to know about Barnelopet coming up a week from Saturday?
Well, you can rent some skis at the Decorah Bicycle.
Okay.
I would say call in and put them on reservation, because they don't have a great number of them to rent. It starts at 10 o'clock when the starting gun, which we don't have, when my finger says go.
Boom.
And we start at the, as I said, the butterfly garden, and it makes a loop and finishes there as well. Afterwards, we have fresh home-baked cookies and hot chocolate that are provided by the Sons of Norway lodges as well, especially the Decorah Sons of Norway Lodge. The women bake the cookies, so they have cookies and hot chocolate. They can hang around afterwards. Some people even bring their sleds with, and then they're sledding on the dike if we have some good snow afterwards, just playing around and having fun. No registration fee, it's all free. Just come and enjoy, and hopefully we'll have some good snow. Park and Rec does a great job of setting the tracks and freshening them up. Sometimes they get really used a lot, so by the time, even though we have snow now, they have a new track setter where they can really set some good tracks. So if there is any cancellation by 30 degrees below zero or something, call up Vesterheim at what is it, 382-9681, or better yet, you can call me on my cell phone to see if it's going to be canceled or not, which usually we don't. Last year we did because of the frigid cold winds, although there were a lot of kids that still showed up. So it just shows the hardiness of those little Vikings out there.
No doubt about it. And I'd imagine that's kind of one of the things that keeps you going with this event too, right, Darlene?
Is the wonderful snow and cold weather.
Well, and the hardiness of the young people willing to go outside, even if the
yes.
event is canceled, right?
It is so fun to see them out. You know, it doesn't last long. I mean, they're usually starting at 10, everybody's gone at 12. You know, some stay around and still ski, but it's not a long event. And it's just so fun to see the kids not only having fun, but enjoying winter along with their families as well. Yep.
Well,
And I'm a winter lover and a snow lover, so it doesn't bother me any.
Well, outdoor recreation, goodies at the end, time to spend with friends and family. You can't go wrong with any of that, as the Barnelopet will take place a week from Saturday, February 4th. Darlene, we thank you for your efforts in this event year in and year out, and we thank you for the time this morning.
You're welcome. And I forgot to mention that the kids, when they finish, receive a medal and a pin as well.
Oh, neat. And
so thank you for having me.
No doubt. It's going to be a fun day. Thank you for your time, Darlene. Darlene Fossum-Martin. It's Barnelopet coming up a week from Saturday at the Decorah Community Prairie. 9:40 for the registration. 10 a.m. is the first group of skiers. A thank you to our guest on the program. We thank our area lawmakers talking about the Education Savings Account School Choice Bill, which passed the Iowa legislature earlier this week. Mike Bergan and Osmundson, the state representatives from our area, and Mike Klimesh, the state senator from our area. We want to thank Gary Boden, the city manager for Waukon, for joining us. Also, I want to thank Darlene Fossum-Martin. And she told us about Barnelopet. That's coming up a week from Saturday, that annual event put on, and hopefully a good day to go out and have the family head to the Decorah Community Prairie for the annual Barnelopet race. And we also want to thank Andrew Boddicker from Lansing, Lansing City Survey, trying to get some feedback of what folks want to see in the community as Lansing makes the effort to become an Iowa great place. Don't forget, each and every week, we put these shows on YouTube as well, so you can actually see the people that we talk to on a week in and week out basis. If you're out gallivanting on YouTube, looking at funny cat videos or anything you do on YouTube, just go to 126 Our Town program. That's a good way to do it. And we also put the links up on all of our LA Communications stations, Facebook pages, another way we bring the content to you at LA Communications. Just a little bit of a heads up, we will not have an Our Town show next week because next Thursday morning at 9 a.m., Dave Anderson will be at the Extreme Arena in Coralville, and we will be broadcasting the Girls State Wrestling Tournament next week. The regional wrestling is going to begin at 11 a.m. tomorrow at Luther College, and the winners from those regionals will make their way down to the first ever sanctioned girls state wrestling tournament in the state of Iowa, and we will have complete coverage. Dave Anderson will be there on Thursday, and I will be joining him on Friday of next week, and you can hear it right here on 94.9 and 99.1 The River. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to our sponsor, Decorah Bank and Trust. And most importantly, thank you for tuning in, for logging on, or for watching Our Town on 94.9 and 99.1 The River.